Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless World Talks are here with Kevin and Bill and Michael. And once again, we would like to take you in the wasteless world. And today we will speak about the size. And let me ask the first question. If you hear the word size, what is the first which came to your mind? Bill.
Little people, big people. We have a neighbor down the hall who's very large, helped us move some heavy boxes, but physical size of people.
Okay, and you, Kevin?
Inefficiency. I was just thinking of all the big companies that I've worked at. The bigger it is, the more waste there is, the more inefficient it is.
That's interesting. You see two people and two very different approaches. And the second question came to it. So is bigger size better?
So in the business world, the answer is almost always yes. Bigger, we need to grow bigger, we need to get bigger, we need to acquire other companies, scale up, and it's always a positive. I mean, it's always something to be desired. And I'm not sure that we stop and ask the question, why? Why do you think that that's better? Because I think that would be blasphemy to say, to question the goal of getting bigger.
What about you, Kevin? Because your answer is the very opposite one, I think.
Yeah, actually, I got a very different answer for you now, because I want to follow Bill's first answer and talk about humans. There's a Russian saying that small women are made for loving, big women are made to work. Which I think is completely dreadful, but you know, it shows there is advantages and disadvantages with size. But in terms of business, it works both ways. You can, of course, it makes more sense to be one company because it's easier to drive and steer. And at the same time, it can become extremely inefficient, especially companies which merge together to form conglomerates.
And we speak frequently about the giants. And the giants, I think, grow in the size where it's exactly what you described. It's generally the right hand don't know what the left hand is doing. And even the senses cannot work together. You know, I just heard recently, yesterday or day before yesterday, very interesting Ely interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger on a US whatever. He was quite a young guy, but he was already in the age when the movie some has been streamed and successful. And he was asked about the host, Arnold, when did you came with the idea to become a bodybuilder? And that was a great answer. He said, you know, I was a child and stand in front of the horse-sized mirror. So I was naked standing there. And I saw that one part of my body is not matching with the rest. It was too big. So I decided to put it in the right shape, the whole body. And it was so crazy, you know, you can imagine the reaction of the audience. And it was somewhere, I will expect 80s, somewhere around there. So from the dressing of the people and so on, 80s, early 90s, I would say. It was quite funny. And today in the morning, I received a message and I put it in the newsletter that the largest US hotel, I think it is in San Francisco. I'm not sure. I have the link in the newsletter. Generally, it is one part of Hilton kingdom, let's say, and they have to give it back to banks because they cannot pay probably the whatever is paying. So it was quite interesting. because 1.2 billion US dollar hotel in the center, owned by one of the richest families, cannot stand against the banks. I will send you the link after. So it was quite interesting. And it's not only one. They have two in the same city and both are doing it the same way. So for me, it's generally the very close the moment when new hotel become a waste, because the bank cannot run hotel. Bank can run bank. And that's, I think, is one of the issues. So this is just a point. I think that this, for me, when I say size, the first what I see is the giant. It's not clear, but generally giant. So the size, I'm combining the views of both of you, because I think it is important to combine. So when I think it was Bill who asked whether it is right, and it will be a blasphemy, you said, not to think that bigger is better. But I think it's time to rethink.
It's actually interesting talking about banks. Remember that in the financial crisis, when the saying was that these banks are too big to fail. And so we have to bail them out, because the cost would be worse for society if we didn't bail them out. So there is another advantage in size for them, but certainly not for us.
Good point. But where did we come up with the belief that we must keep growing? It must be bigger, bigger, bigger. Where does that come from?
If I take it from the perspective of industrial revolutions, generally I will come to Ford. At least this was taught to me. So Ford was the first mass production, and from that moment, probably somehow connecting that if we do more, will be better. But the reality is frequently very different. So more means more waste means more cost, more environmental impact, and. So I don't think so. Just before we start this talk, I received a link to finextra.com. Generally, this is a publication platform for mostly financial stuff, but I'm writing time to time about the industry 5.0. And one Indian guy writes there that the end of unicorns ended because it started the age of centaurs. I don't know how to pronounce. We say centaurs in Czech Republic. And he explained that a unicorn has a valuation of 1 billion or over 1 billion, but a centaur has a turnover of not turnover, he mentioned it, something like a turnover generally of 100 million. So something which is more, you can grasp more better and you can work better with. So it was quite interesting article. So I left my comment and I will send the article to you.
Kevin, what do you think it would take for the attitude of more to change to the attitude of enough in a business?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it would take dismantling the shareholder structure, maybe. I think that shareholder value is the main drive of businesses these days. And so it's the businesses that, doing good for society, being successful, being decent, all the other metrics are put aside because profit and shareholder value, shareholder return is the most important thing that businesses have to deliver on. And I think that when we can change to say that the most important thing a business can deliver on is helping the planet, helping people, being a good member of society in other ways. I think that's what needs to be done to have change.
I suspect that it's not binary, and that the answer might be more of a portfolio answer, so that shareholder value is important, because we don't want to go bankrupt. But by the same token, especially younger people are attracted to organizations that have a purpose similar to theirs, or have an appreciation for treating people right, treating the planet right, and so on. So I'm hoping that as we move forward, the labor force, we know that the labor force is getting more power because there are fewer of us, and so we are more highly prized than in the old days when we had more people than we had jobs. But I'm hoping that, and in fact, there are some signs now that there are green stocks. There are companies who profess to doing good things for the planet, or they give 1% of all their sales to planet friendly organizations. It's creeping slowly into our mindset. It's creeping slowly. I guess my question is, how do we accelerate that? And I can think, as I'm talking, of one way, and that is what Michael is doing with addressing a lot of his presentations to students and to younger people, and so on. I just wish I knew how to accelerate it more.
You, Bill, if I am not wrong, you sent today in the morning or yesterday the link to the 5 oil companies which executives get $15 million in bonuses for destroying the planet generally. I don't know whether it was you or someone else.
Yeah. And it's hard to really understand that, because the writer of that article is putting their own spin on what the objectives of the KPIs or what they are. First of all, I doubt that the writer of that has seen the written down goals of each of the executives. And second of all, those goals are all usually so nuanced that to put a title on that, like saying that they got $15 billion for destroying the planet, is really a stretch. I don't think we know that. I think it's real interesting that, I mean, we have a lot of preconceptions, the preconception that the oil companies are causing the climate change. We have some hard facts, but they're also invested in, and I'm not defending them, they're also invested in wind and solar and trying to get ahead of the curve. They're very late in doing it, but I don't think that writer has as much information about that as they claim to. And they're still the giants. As long as they're the giants, they have the power. They can give it to whoever they want to give it to.
And generally, why I mentioned, sorry to disturb you, why I mention it, that we are coming into, let's say there is a clash between the let's do and be environmental friendly and all of us, and then came a news, somebody get billions of whatever dollars for not being like so. So you see, there must be, I think, we must narrow the understanding. And what I would like to see, the same rules for everyone. And the rules cannot be written by giants. And
that's never going to happen.
Oh, I don't like the word never. So
I agree.
have heard it so many times around me. So I teach the directors not to use the word in front of me generally when we are riding in a car together, because it depends only on us. So and I think, and Kevin, and you mentioned it, it's really changing. So it's really changing, and the fact that it's changing so fast that we can see it, it was all the time changing, but never so fast that we recognize it. And I have the advantage that I watched the development for 10 years. So that's my advantage, that I see 10 years, not just 1 year or 2 years, but I see and compare 10 years, and it is changing. So right now is to narrow it, put it in the right perspective, I think. And I think that one of the reasons, and you mentioned in both, is generally the shareholders and stakeholders, they work with number, which is projected in a money, or money projected in a number. So it's easy to understand. 5 is lower than 8. 8 is higher, or whatever. But with the other targets, there is no such easy understandable thing. Less waste is understandable. You have full garbage bin or you have empty garbage bin. So it's empty. You have cost or you don't have cost. Again, so it's easy to understand. But I think still there is a missing criteria, and I don't speak about the carbon emission trading because this is a virtual thing. I think there is missing some criteria which will be easy to understand for everyone and applicable to everyone.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. That's what it will take, so that we've got some sort of standard, and we can talk about whether or not this year was further up on the scale in a positive fashion than last year, and how to get it even further ahead for the next year. Just like we talk about, gross national product but it's always very simple in dollars or some currency. It's very easy to see whether we are better or worse. When you get into nebulous areas, which waste is somewhat of a nebulous area, we need to make that less nebulous. We need to make that quantifiable, so that we can talk about that and point to that and have discussions about that. Maybe that's what we need to do, is to come up with a metrics for worldwide waste, or a country's waste, how to measure it, 2 or 3 different elements that go into coming up with an index. I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's quite okay. I was actually just going to agree with you. I think there was one interesting thing in history, and you will know more about it than I do, Bill, but the only giant that got broken up was Standard Oil in the US that I can think of.
AT&T in the 60s or 70s.
Okay. Do you know, I know with Standard Oil, the reason they were broken up is because they started to become too powerful for politicians to be comfortable with. And is that the same with AT&T?
And I don't know that if that would happen again if in 2023. I don't know.
On the other hand, if you look around the development around AI, we are coming to this point, because the politicians who push for AI are right now saying, sorry, it's too fast, we cannot control, let's implement whatever controlling tools and so on. It's too late, generally, it's too late. The only thing, the controlling tool will not help us, because someone is controlling the controlling tool, and probably it's already doing AI. So the only thing which we can really rely on is our own decision and our own mindset. And some criteria, there exists a waste, every country record waste volumes and so on, but all these criteria, same as the AI, was this this system was created by the waste industry. So the countries present what the waste industry would like to be presented. You know, just yesterday or day before yesterday, my mom called me and she said, Michael, have you seen the TV? She knows I'm not watching. And I said, no. Why? You know, we are implementing right now the returnable scheme for bottles, glass, plastic, even the cans and so on, so returnable. Something what was here 30 years ago was a standard. Everything was in glass and we just returned the glass. That was simple. And she said, you know, the waste industries start to be against. Of course, it was so easy business for them. If somebody make the recycling, they just sell. And right now, somebody take out the profit. And I just take the example from one of my recent projects. The client deal with quite a valuable material generally. And we step in and realize that the waste company, which is managing their waste, is paying 20 instead of 200 for the kilo. So we said it. We said, okay, we will buy. We find out a better buyer, so we buy and sell. And within 1 month, and the waste company was there for 2 years or 3 years, without any change price. We buy the sample shipment, then a second shipment, so we pay immediately money to the company, and then the waste company came and doubled their price within 1 month's time, you know, and the company decided to get back to them, which is, you know, it's their decision. But what was interesting, even without moving a finger, I was able to increase double the profitability of my client. And we will push even more, that we will increase it up to the maximum. And I came to one interesting moment, and maybe this will be somehow applicable to the discussion which we have. You know, there is one similarity when a waste industry manager came in a company and me. We both look for waste. That's the same. The difference is that the waste manager look for waste to make money on. So he looks how many containers should be implemented and must be paid, how many dispatch per month, and. So all of those are cost for the client. And then he gets, for some material, he gets something back. Usually the client is in a red number. But when I came, I look for waste as well. But I look how to prevent it happen. And only what came from us is generally the request. We buy the material and the client issue invoice to us, to Industry 5.0 generally. So instead of cost, immediately he generate profit. And I think that this understanding must be projected all across, because then if the people will understand that less does not mean scarcity or having bad life, but having a better life. And we touched it last time. I think this is exactly the moment when the people will start think themselves and they will give their containers away, because that will be the moment.
Reaching that moment, I agree with you, Michael. However, the giants have buried many landmines out there for you and me to reach that goal. One of them is whitewashing, which we have talked about before, and their marketing people, and they say things like carbon trading is good, and look at us. We just bought this startup company that's in, I don't know, making power out of the air or whatever, and that's what they talk about all the time. And so people say, oh, you know, Exxon is a wonderful company because they're promoting wind and solar and so on, and they've got an eye to the future, and so that's a landmine for us, changing the attitude that's commonly held. So maybe what we need to do, right along with coming up with some sort of metrics, some sort of number or index to how we've gotten better in the whole wasteless world approach. And the second item that we need is an explanation of these landmines so that people can read what is greenwashing. Here's an example of 5 greenwashing that the marketing people from Madison Avenue are currently proposing, and call it that and keep repeating that. Boy, there are so many different levels to this, aren't there?
There really are. I think it's interesting. These marketing people, even though I'm one, people who have coffee machines at home and use aluminium every time they make a cup of coffee and throw it away. I mean, how on earth did anyone ever think that was a good idea? And that the depressing thing is, why do consumers still buy it? And talking about metrics, it'd be really interesting to find out with these coffee producers how much aluminium they use in a year. Because it's, I'm sure it's a shockingly high figure, and how much of that never comes back.
I think the second number is the most important, that it does not come back. That's the fact. Because the people, this is one of the landmine, they say, okay, we use aluminium because all aluminium can be recycled. We use metal because all metal can be recycled. Yes, everything can be recycled. The issue is that it is not. So generally the metrics should show the difference between can be and is. And for me, I am considering for a long time, I am considering to have on May 31st ended the 17 project. It was for 17 months. It was very clearly defined what will happen. Majority happens. COVID is no more rated as a whatever. So apart we have finished. And I think that we should have the wasteless world exactly the same, not just a virtual one. I would like to see every cable drum which I move by my hand. I would like to see the tree which I have saved. Not the tree which maybe virtually will be planted. No, I will see the one which was saved with it. And I think this palpable result will help the people to understand. Of course, it's not so easy to project it all across all the world in all the understanding, but the waste prevention legislation is one part of the story, and we had to add the second part, the metrics in some way, which is, as I said, understandable, but you can touch it. You can really, not that you stretch your hand outside of the window and you will say, we have reached 1.5 degrees, because you will not recognize on the hand whether it's 1.5 more or less. Our skin is not so sensitive. But you will understand if the air you are breathing, and right now you have trouble with in, as you told me, Bill, because of the fires from Canada, this is something which you can touch with your lungs generally and see with your eyes. So this is what we must do. So it must be a physical matrix, not the virtual one.
Good point.
I don't know if you probably don't, Michael, but I was watching baseball last night, and the Yankees game in Yankee Stadium in New York, you could see the smoke coming from Canada actually down into the stadium itself. It has such a huge impact.
And I was thinking, we just shortly told with Bill before, and he told me that. And in my image, when I imagine where he is sitting and where is Canada, I was thinking it's far away, but generally he said 5 hours drive. And immediately to my head came, okay, I am sitting 5 hours drive from the borders of Ukraine. So it's generally, this is maybe one of the metrics, Let's project it in something which the people can imagine. 5 hours drive, you can imagine. Everyone can imagine. So similar matrix should be established, which can be easily understood, because then you project it in a wasting time and many other things, but it must be, the first one must be understandable. And not that one will say, I will ride a Ferrari, and the second, I will ride an old German Trabant. No, it must be understood. 5 hours, I don't say which car, 5 hours ride. If you have a fast car, okay, you will go faster, it's fine. But still, you please imagine you will stay 5 hours in your car. That's the image. How far you can, that's another topic.
I agree with that, and would like to add that it not only needs to be easily understandable like that, but you need to be able to graph it, chart it, see the trend. And I'm not sure how a 5-hour drive is graphable.
It is. On my opinion, it is. If you know the target that it will be 24 hours, 5 hours is easy to, it's just such a small part of the big one.
Okay.
But what I would like to say, I probably mentioned it some time ago. When I was a kid, we have in a school, we have so when we are running, we have a circle to run on. It was 150 meters, something like that. It was not big. And I really love to run 3 kilometers. So you have to make it 20 rounds. And I never count from 1 to 20. All the time, I count from 20 to 1. Because with every number which was lower and I was closer to the target, to 0, I gain more power. And I really enjoy it. So I hate a long distance. When one circle was 3 kilometers, it was not so fine for me. But the small ones, I really enjoy. So maybe if we can set up like I did with the 17 challenge, that it was May 31st, 2023, if we can make something like this day, and then came with the distance and our contribution, and if we contribute more, it came closer to us. It's not 2050, because I don't know whether I will be living in 30 years. And many people don't know whether they will be. But on the other hand, many people in politics and in the business, they know they will be no more accountable. There will be no more in politics.
Right.
Just get their salaries or pensions and whatever, and they will be fine, because someone else will be accountable. So I think the segments, we should make not one target, but the segments which easily we know that we will probably live at the time we will be accountable. So it can be 5, 3 years, I don't know, and make these steps. Like I say all the time, small steps. You cannot do the first step within doing the second one.
So that's the approach that I take with strategic planning is a lot like that. Traditional strategic planning has been incremental, and it just extrapolates on what you've done for the last year or doing now. But it doesn't look what the world is going to be like in 2030 or 2040. So the approach that my clients take is to imagine 2030 or 2040, something that's more than a few years out, and then plan backwards. So if the world is going to look like this, and there's going to be autonomous vehicles, will be half the cars on the road, and our power is going to come from microgrids instead of, and so on, and that's what the world is going to be like, then my product is going to need to evolve like this, and my company is going to need to evolve like that to meet that future. So it's a forward-looking rather than a backward-looking planning. So I would, I think that's a great idea to have 2 goals, or a goal for 2030 or 2040, and then another goal for next year. And so that's how you take the steps. You have to run around that circle 20 times, and in the next year I'm going to run around one of the circles, and the following year, and so on. I like that.
I was just thinking, I read some of that in the UK. When you drive and you break the driving laws, you get penalty points put onto your license, and I don't know how many. I think after 3 points, then you have to pay a big fine or something happens. But you accumulate punishment on your license. Whereas in Italy, they do it the other way around. You have a certain figure, and then you lose points for every time you infringe the driving rules. And I think this is really interesting. If we could do the same for the planet, so instead of saying that so much CO2 was pumped into the air last year, if you look at it another way and say instead, there's only this much breathable air left and it's decreasing. So we create this feeling of loss. It will have much more impact than the other way of looking at the metrics.
Isn't that interesting?
We have 2 minutes 50 left. It's a run again. It's fascinating, but I think we are close to the solution. And one very important part of it, we must be accountable for our actions. Not that someone, the giant, is not accountable. Not that the CEO of a company will leave without anything and he just left the damage which he left behind and just he leave with a golden parachute, as we say. No, the accountability must be there for everyone, no matter what he or she is doing. And this is why the short term is important, because this is the term in which you are accountable. If you did not fill, your points will be there, and not that someone else will employ you because you left the biggest company in the world. No, you have been fired, and there should be generally a protection against doing the same mistake again and again and again just because you get interesting name on board. So people must feel the pressure, and I think it will be good. Yeah. So
at the beginning, we were talking about we are getting better. We are progressing. We are taking on more things, and I see that happening in the environment. In 1972, when I finished high school, the debate topic was federal government should control pollution. And I remember taking pictures of open sewage going into the rivers and smokestacks and stuff.
1 minute left.
And so we've come miles since that in our environment. So I agree, we are making progress.
Okay, so that's the end today. So we would like to wish all of you have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, and be visible, because together we will make our blue marble visible to the space again. Thanks a lot and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.